I've been watching the Democrat National Convention and I see some really powerful women speaking. I see such incredible prosecutors who had their roots in the criminal justice system shining and finding the opportunity to lead, to make a difference. And I've been thinking about my own roots and who have been the women in my world who've had an impact, a lasting impact. And there are six women that fall into basically three categories. They were my grandmothers, my mothers, and the two women who I spent significant years with as my partners. And so when I think back to the lessons of my maternal and paternal grandmothers, they were very different. I was young, and on my mother's side, my maternal grandmother was very stoic, and that sternness was a sense of a discipline, a sense of a respect, and it was difficult. It was an unusual relationship. And then on my father's side, my grandmother there, she was very loving, very welcoming, but she was also very poor. She grew up in poverty. She spent her life in poverty, and when I visited her, her world was in poverty and was in struggle. And so I came to see two different sides from my grandmothers. And I think I missed an incredible opportunity by not really getting to know them and to really truly getting to understand how they became the women that they were. My maternal grandmother was a nurse. I don't know what my paternal grandmother did. And so comes to the next category of the next two women in my life, mom and mama. Yes, mom was my mother, and she made lots of choices, but also a huge amount of sacrifices to give me opportunities, to give me the world that I would eventually become a part of. She stood up for justice, she stood up for knowledge, she stood up for equality and equitability. But I also think my mother stood for a lot more than those entities. It was about inclusivity. It was about being liberated. It's about being free. It's about making choices. And she used her education. She used her knowledge to truly find a way to move me forward. And at age 87, she went from just being not just being my mother, but to also being Dr. Stella Peterson. She got an honorary doctorate very late in life because of her contribution to so many other children. Then there was Mama. Mama was a very simple woman. She had been a cook in a boarding school. She had been widowed, but her world was children. She had all of these kids who would come in and out through her home, who lived in her home. And she was our opposite neighbor across the street. And when I came out of the hospital, she took care of me. She looked after me. She nurtured me so my mom could go back to work to do what was also important to my mother. And there was this division of labor. And mama cooked for me. My mother wasn't a very good cook. So all my memories with mama was knowing that if I really wanted to have something I wanted to really eat and I could get away from the dinner table at my home, I could always go across to mama's place to have my favorite meals. And I just used to enjoy hanging out because it was just a very loving environment, a stress free environment, but there were expectations. There were expectations to be the best that I could be, and the expectations were different to how things were with my mother. And then there is Gwen and Darlene. So Gwen came into my life when I was in my early mid 20s. And I was in that stage where I was building my sailing career, building sort of the next level of the dreams. And she was my partner. She was my lover. She was my partner. She was my confidant. She was a part of that energy that actually helped me to achieve that dream. And she did it at tremendous sacrifice to herself. She did it because this is something that she knew was important to me. And she was willing to support me in every way possible, even though at times she didn't feel like doing it, even though at times it scared her because she did not know if I would come home from these yacht races. We lived from sort of one race to the next race, not knowing how we were going to eat at times. And there were times we didn't eat. But she stayed with me until she couldn't anymore. She stayed with me until she knew that my career had reached its pinnacle and that I would be fine. I would be able to build that next stage of my life. And then she chose to leave, which took tremendous courage for her to go into her own world alone, having done everything that she could have done for me. And I'm always going to be grateful to the sacrifices that Gwen had made and the impact that she had made on my life, because I wouldn't be today the sailor and hence built upon the foundation that the four other women had laid down to work upon. And then there's my marriage to Darlene. And some folks said, well, there's such big cultural differences, there's such big age differences, there are such big different experiences that we have. And gee, you met and married in 4 and a bit months, so fast. Well, you know what is fast? 25 years. 25 years have flown by like that, which we have just celebrated. And I think of all the experiences, the people, the opportunities that we built together. And we both knew it was not going to be easy, it was going to be hard work. But we were willing to commit that hard work to each other because we were willing to build a life. Now, there are so many people who, especially women, who want a high value man. But what is a high value person? It's not about the stuff you have, it's about what is in your soul. And what is in my soul was poured in by my grandmothers, was fostered by mom and my mother, and was encouraged and enhanced by Gwen and Darlene. And so I am the person because I am the sum total of all of these different experiences. And I've traveled around many places and I look at relationships and how difficult intersex relationships truly are, how complex they can be. But do they really have to be this way? Can we not just find a way of having respect, having tolerance, accepting when no means no, versus how some people in other philosophies who think they can just grab women by their whatever, or they can rape a woman, or they can sexually molest a woman and just walk away because they're a celebrity? We have such difficult situations, and we are different. Men and women are totally, totally different. We should celebrate those differences and build upon those differences and respect those differences. I see so many households that don't have a male, that there may be three generations of women in the same household living in poverty, struggling with no strong role model. And I've tried to be a role model in some of those environments. I've tried to look and say, how can we make this world a better place? How can we lift people up? This is the roots and the fabric that I come from. So as I watch the DNC convention, as I look at the person who could be and should be our next president of the United States, I also think of another strong woman that we missed an opportunity with, Hillary Clinton, a woman who had ideas and had values and had a vision. But there were so many misogynists. There were so many people who were prejudiced. There were so many people who were afraid of this incredible strength. We must not be afraid of that strength. We must celebrate that strength and be a part of that strength, because that strength together, we see things from a different perspective and we all become better. Let us make sure that when we elect Kamala Harris as the next President of the United States, that we are lifting up all women around the world. We are setting an example to all women to be their maximum potential, to know that they are safe, to know that we have their backs covered, to know that we want the best for our world, and we'll get that by being together in a respectful, uplifting, caring, loving environment.